Hello and welcome to Age Whiskey. My name is Dave, and this is where we challenge everything after the still. And today is an awesome day because today I was able to interview the people over at West Virginia Great Barrel Company. So this is my first cooperage interview I've ever had. I'm super excited to talk to these guys. Fantastic company, great story, really interesting how they keep the process exactly the same. How they started, all that kind of stuff, man. It's such a great company. Anyway, special thanks to Brett Wolfington and Kate that was over there and helped schedule the whole thing. Really want to say thank you to both of you. Anyway, without further ado, here's the video. Check it out. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Dave, and this is Age Whiskey, and this is where we challenge everything after the still. And somebody that's out here challenging things after the still is Brett Wolfington with the West Virginia Great Barrel Company. Thank you, Brett, for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
How you doing today?
Doing well. Yourself?
Great. So tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved in being in a cooperage company and industry? Have you done anything like this before?
No, I haven't. This it's been quite the experience for me. So it kind of dates back a couple years. I came on board in 2019. Prior to that, I've been working in manufacturing for a little over a decade. I came from Kansas and I moved out to the East Coast about 12 years ago. I met my wife out there, and she was working at a winery at the time. And that really kind of got me interested in the whole world of wine and spirits. Prior to that time, I really had not had any involvement in it. But I started getting involved a little bit. I actually went to an ACSA event back in, I think, 2017, and was really interested in kind of starting a distillery at the time. And it was around that time that the owners of this company, they were in the early phases of construction at the time. They were looking for a manager for the company, and they reached out and found me. I came down looking at it, almost intending really to just touch base with them as a potential supplier, and ended up seeing what they were doing and just falling in love with the idea, with the project. It's a pretty spectacular vision that they have and that we're pursuing here. And it's really just been great to see the impact of this on the community and the industry. So I have no doubt I made the right decision. It's been a great blending of my passions for the spirits industry and also for manufacturing. And I'm glad to be able to take both of those passions and help actually have a really big impact on the industry.
Yeah, I mean, Great Barrel Company has such a fantastic origin story initially tragic, right? Because he had this flood that came through. But tell me a little bit and tell the rest of the viewers about how it got started and the impact that you guys are making in that community.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, so back in 2016, this community was hit by a pretty devastating flood. 23 people died in West Virginia. A lot of people were left homeless. And that's really how the group of investors that started the West Virginia Great Barrel Company came together. They came together as local business owners, as people with second homes at the Greenbrier Resort, which is down the road, and united to help rebuild homes for people who lost everything in this flood. And they were able to do so in a very short amount of time. Even beating FEMA by a substantial margin and getting people back in their homes. They built a community called Hope Village in the area, and were able to actually turn over the homes to the people that they built them for, giving these people equity, some of them, for the first time. But after they completed this project and put all these people, back in homes, they realized that this community was not going to succeed if it wasn't for economic development, and that they needed to find a way to continue to develop the community in that way in order to really help these people out for the long term. And so at first it was just an idea of looking around and trying to find out what they could do. The idea really centered around manufacturing, around being able to utilize the abundant natural resources here But, West Virginia has a history of really exploitation when it comes to its natural resources. Companies that would come in and particularly mining industry, the forestry industry a little further back too, and taking those resources and sending them elsewhere where a lot of the value was captured. Not a lot of it was returned to the people here. And now we have an opportunity, to build a product in West Virginia using its own resources and ship it out, capturing all the value here. And so the way that the cooperage really kind of coalesced was there's a local distillery called Smooth Ambler. You probably know about it. It's won awards. It's very well known. Mm-hmm. And Smooth Ambler had just been purchased by Pernod Ricard and was being asked to significantly increase production. But at the time, the barrel industry was going through a pretty substantial shortage, and there weren't enough barrels in the market for them to fulfill that demand. But they thought it was crazy. They're surrounded here by beautiful, tight grain white oak. And that oak just gets, what little of it gets harvested for barrels here gets shipped out of state, made into barrels, and then shipped right back to them. So that was kind of the aha moment. One of our main investors was having dinner with a Smooth Ambler investor. And they were discussing that. They decided, wow, we could just make barrels here. That could be our idea. So they set out to find a way to build a cooperage and research what it would take to do it. It turns out it takes quite a bit of money, quite a bit of time, and a substantial amount of infrastructure in order to do this right. They started out by building a stave mill, and that's been up and running now for several years. And it's just down the road in Monroe County. And that produces the majority of our staves. And then after that, they set out to look for a company to help build the cooperage. And they stumbled upon a company in Kentucky that was making very advanced cooperage equipment and really starting to change the game a little bit in terms of what it was bringing to the industry in terms of quality and efficiencies. And we went to them and purchased not only the equipment, but really the design for the entire facility. And we're able to build in just a few years a very advanced facility that's able to make extremely high quality barrels and do so pretty efficiently.
How many barrels do you produce in a month, year? I don't know. Like, what are your metrics right now?
Well, we're ramping up. When this company gets to full production with one shift, we'll be doing around 700 barrels a day. Right now, we're doing around 400 to 600.
Okay.
And we're seeing some pretty significant demand for orders beyond that. So we're trying to grow responsibly right now, and there's a long lead time for the wood that has to be considered as we grow. And then bringing employees on and making sure that we have the right training in place and the right equipment. So we're growing rapidly, and we expect to reach our full production numbers next year.
That's pretty exciting. I mean, especially going through the COVID climate that kind of happened and stifled a lot of companies, and you guys are still growing through this time. That's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. It was definitely a little bit of a rough start. We started up in March of 2020. So I remember shipping our first order out, actually the Smooth Ambler, and then the next day almost turning around and getting a message from the governor saying we had to shut down. So that was tough. And, despite the fact that alcohol's done pretty well through the recession, or through the COVID recession there, we were still kind of a new player in the market. So reaching out to customers and getting in the door was made pretty challenging. But almost as soon as the market started opening back up, as soon as people started welcoming visitors, we started getting a lot of interest in our product. And we've been able to grow our business with our existing customers pretty rapidly as they've seen the quality that we can provide. So we've kind of taken off here in the last few months.
Do you offer any tours out there in the facility?
We plan to. We were initially to do that at startup, but just due to COVID, we decided to postpone that. So we'll likely be starting that up next year. We don't have any firm plans right now, but we do have a visitor center and tour route established, and that's definitely a part of the future. We want to. One of our goals is really to be a very transparent cooperage. We feel like the distilling industry has been extremely transparent. And we want to bring that to this industry, which doesn't necessarily share that. It's a little more competitive in terms of just the overall market. But we have nothing to hide here. We think that our technology is really unique, and that we're going to be iterating on it very quickly. So we're not really afraid to show that off. In fact, we want to bring people here and show them how barrels are made and give them the details that can help them be a more educated consumer. And we feel like that's going to help you, really appreciate the spirits more, the more you know about the whole process.
I agree. Talking about the whole process, a lot of the videos that you've been shooting, not you specifically, but your company has been shooting and putting out right now. You speak about not only process, but quality to start at the very beginning, and how you select some of the wood, and how West Virginia has some of the best white oak that's out there, and some of their tight grained white oak. Can you speak to a little bit about why tight grained is better than, maybe an oak in a different region?
Absolutely. So, when a lot of people think of tight grain, they think about it really kind of almost the opposite way of what it actually is. So in grows, you have early wood that develops in the spring. It's got a lot of vessels in it where the tree can, move sap through the tree. And then you have the late wood that forms later in the year. And it doesn't have as many of those vessels. Well, the tighter the grain, the more vessels per inch that you have. And reality is that with the tighter grain wood, you're able to actually extract more flavor, more color from that wood. So it's kind of the opposite of what you'd think, but tightly grained wood really is able to impart a better character to a spirit that's aged in those barrels. And so in Appalachia here, particularly in the region of Appalachia that we're in, which is a pretty high elevation area with very steep mountains, very poor soils, and cold winters and pretty cool summers. In fact, it's going to get down in the 40s here tonight in late June. We grow our trees pretty slowly, and we get a very high preponderance of tightly grained wood here. Almost all of our wood is sourced from about 200 miles from radius from where we're at here in Caldwell, West Virginia. And it's all a very mountainous area here. So we get some really great choice wood, and we're pretty proud of that. We think that's a big part of what makes our barrels special.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And honestly, when I first heard your story about tight grain, I thought it was all BS until I actually picked up a beam from a 170-year-old barn, and the grain on it, you could definitely see it was white oak, but the grain on it was so tight. And I was talking to the gentleman that's been kind of processing a lot of this wood, and he's saying back in the day, that's the way all that oak was. It was slow grain, it was slow grow, and now I don't know if it's genetically modified or whatever it is, but at least in Michigan, the gaps are much larger, and
sure,
maybe the growing region, a lot of people don't really understand why, but
increased temperatures and just, perhaps change in seasons a little bit, but, it takes harsh environments to grow trees slowly. And so, Minnesota, like you mentioned, there's definitely some tightly grained wood up there as well. But we're pretty proud of our region in Appalachia here, where we just get that all the time, and it really shows in the barrels. It's evident. We've had distillers comment on it, and we do expect that that's a major part of why we're seeing kind of the distillers are seeing kind of the results that they're seeing out of our barrels. It's still early. We've only been around since last year. So, not a lot of product, not any product has hit the market yet with that's been aged in our barrels, but we've done a lot of tasting with the distillers that have, been aging in our barrels, and they're seeing some results that are really pretty significant. They're seeing darker colors. They're seeing more flavor. We've won some blind tastings up against whiskey that's been aged in barrels 2 years longer than ours. So they're getting pretty excited, and there's a lot of factors involved there. The tight grain wood is certainly one, we believe, but there's a lot of other factors in our process. Some of the technology that we've been able to bring to bear that we think is just going to be able to generate more consistent and more well-rounded whiskeys in our barrels.
Yeah, let's go into that real quick, because some of the
Mhm.
things that I was doing some research on with your infrared heating
Yeah.
for toasting the barrels instead of just random fires, that I don't know what it's doing in there, but it's kind of heating it up, so we don't really know the temperature. But you're so precise on everything that you're doing. It's so interesting. I mean, me coming from a background in manufacturing, being in the Metro Detroit area, manufacturing is such a big part of what we've been growing up. All of our fathers and everything have gone through that industry. So to see it kind of move into the cooperage spot, where each and every single barrel comes out is exactly how you planned it to be, is so fascinating for me. So go into a little bit about why you chose to build a manufacturing process like this, and how you continue to kind of keep quality the same every time.
Absolutely. So, first of all, my background, I started out as a Six Sigma black belt, which is a kind of a process engineer focused on using statistical methods and other project management methods to reduce variation in processes, right? And that's really been a passion of mine, is finding ways to identify, measure, and eliminate variation. That is really what drives quality in a process, is when you're able to take variation out of every step of that process. You're able to control it a lot more. So we've looked at, the different ways of toasting and charring barrels. And let's start with toasting here, because toasting is really kind of a key new innovation that's really been having a huge impact on the industry lately. We're seeing it just take off throughout the industry amongst all of our customers. And so, most people know that a whiskey barrel is charred. But not everyone knows that a lot of whiskey barrels, particularly now, get toasted before they get charred. And that can have significant impacts on flavor.
Before you go into that, I mean, I think a lot of people understand what charring is, flame on it, having the black kind of soot, kind of charcoal on the outside. But talk to the people about what toasting is in a barrel.
So toasting is really a much lower temperature form of heat treatment for a barrel. When you're charring or toasting a barrel, the goal is to convert sugars in that wood into flavors that can impact the color and the taste of the spirit. And so, historically, barrels were only charred for the most part, or in wine, barrels were typically only toasted. If we go into just the char, so when a barrel is charred, you generate a layer of really basically activated carbon that acts only as a filter. That carbon doesn't add color, it doesn't add flavor into the spirit. But behind the char, you end up with a layer of wood that wasn't fully carbonized, but it was toasted. It was, you can see the change in color in the wood. You can see that the sugars in that wood have kind of been pulled out of it. And that's really where the flavor and color comes from in the spirit. And so what we've done is we've built a separate system for that, and we're not unique in that we in having a separate toasting system. A lot of cooperages offer that, but where we're kind of unique is that we've built an infrared toasting system that's fully integrated into our process. The infrared gives us the ability to not only dial in the toast to a much more precise level of control, but we can penetrate very deeply into that wood. When you look at a cross section of our stave, it's pretty amazing, because even on a light toast, you can see change in color in the stave halfway into it.
Oh, yeah.
It's really incredible. And what that does is it helps not only create a massive reservoir of flavor and color in the stave, but it helps break down tannins, which, especially in craft whiskey, which is generally not aged as long as some of the bigger guys can do it. Tannins can be an issue in younger whiskeys. And so we think that this process is going to help them out. Because your spirit is just not going to come into contact with a lot of new oak. So our toasting process, it starts out with a barrel getting loaded into our toaster. We can toast about 27 barrels at a time using this infrared process, and we've got more than 16 kilowatts of energy per barrel to toast with. So it's really incredible. We can actually char a barrel on the toaster in a pretty short amount of time, but we keep it dialed way down. For the most part, and we can control around the time and temperature range. So as the barrel goes through the toasting process, we can control the output of the heaters, so we get the perfect toast on the barrel every time. And we're able to collect that data And so what we're going to do in the future is we're working to build that into our process so that we can actually provide the data directly to distillers so they can make more informed decisions about how the barrel's been treated and how they need to potentially adjust their process if they want to achieve certain specific flavor ranges.
I mean, that's so fascinating to be able to track each and every barrel as it goes through the process, all the way back to, it sounds like you can track it all the way back to where the wood was harvested. Is that right?
Yeah, to an extent. We've got, we work with a number of different loggers. So we work both with independent loggers, but also we bring in our own timber. And so we have pretty good control and knowledge of where that wood comes from. And one of the things that we do for a lot of our customers is actually provide them with wood that is, from a specific state or region. And we also work with some distillers to hand select their wood all the way from logs. So that's something that, is a service that we can offer. We can assist with. We've had a lot of interest for region-specific wood. I think that the impetus behind that is really kind of the general increase in awareness of terroir in both wine and spirits. We're starting to see it more and more, creep into the spirit realm. And the wood being, the provider of a substantial amount of the flavor in the spirit is kind of a natural evolution, of how to seek out terroir. It's not just the grain, but you can also influence it by the cask treatment. So, does a Pennsylvania or a Missouri oak have a different flavor than, say, a West Virginia or a Minnesota oak? I think that's very much an open question, but it's interesting, and I'm certainly excited to find out what people can do with that.
Yeah, and even elevation too, like you were saying.
Yeah.
West Virginia, you have the highs and the lows out there, so it's really interesting to play with that kind of space.
Absolutely. Trees are a little bit different than most crops too, in that a tree can grow completely differently from another one that's 10 feet apart. We, especially in the mountains here, you've got such rapidly changing elevations and slopes, and even the rocks or soil that the trees are growing in can change. It can actually change from one side of the tree to the next. So there is a lot of just complexity in what nature can do in a log. And, we're working on ways to try to track more and more of those variables so that we can really give fine grain control to distillers over, the type of wood that they're using and what impact that's going to have. But it's just fun to really see the kind of creativity that people are bringing to this problem, because everyone's got a different idea and everyone wants to try things out. Some of it's going to work great. Some of it's probably not going to go anywhere, but that's part of the fun of being in the industry right now, is people aren't afraid to take those kind of chances and see what happens.
Yeah, and this seems like there's so much innovation happening. Every time you turn around, there's a new distillery releasing this crazy new technique that they use to age or whatever. And some of the things that I've been working on is just kind of proving, does it work in my controlled environment, and seeing how some of these variables can be tweaked just a little bit. And some of the questions that have been sent over to me was, how does and this is something you were touching on just a second ago, how does the region of the wood within the tree affect the taste of the whiskey? So the limb, the bark, the the heart of the and the trunks out to the leaves, and how are heavy. I mean, obviously your first and foremost requirement is, let's make something that contains whiskey and doesn't leak out, right? So, and then next is, okay, let's try and innovate wherever we can. Obviously, you can't extend out to limbs and that kind of stuff, but have you done any kind of research into non-traditional kind of use of some of this wood?
Well, as far as looking at, different sections of the tree, we haven't specifically done that. I know some of, there's people out there who have. Buffalo Trace comes to mind. But that's something that it's very interesting. We'd love to work with distillers on projects like that. We're working with some right now on more region specific, wood projects, but we certainly have the ability to select from amongst different areas of the tree, different ages of tree. That's something that could certainly have an effect there. We can isolate specific growth rings per inch, so you get different grain densities.
Wow.
And we have access to a large number of species too. So that's something that we're seeing a lot of people, really play around with right now. Chinkapin oak is becoming, a word that I'm hearing more and more from our customers. People are interested in that. We've seen some interest in things like chestnut and then other more exotic species as well. We've even got our hands on some Mizunara oak right now for one customer that we're working on, making some barrels with, and some other things. And it's pretty exciting to be able to not only have access to so many different great kinds of wood, but to be able to see what people are doing with it and have a role in seeing how that's going to affect their product. And we're also working on the treatment of the wood with different customers. It's unique toasting and unique charring and toasting methods that we can do that'll also have a big role in the final flavor of that spirit.
Yeah, let's go back a few steps into the seasoning. So, the tree is cut down, it's chopped, it's quarter sawn, processed, everything's, in the perfect size. Then you season it for 3 to 6 months, plus or minus, or a little bit longer, which means, and correct if I'm wrong, it's just leaving it out in the wild, right? So rain comes down on it. And then, and help me understand, you have a separate kind of seasoning facility. You take it indoors. How does that work?
Yeah. So the way the process works is after the log is cut, the log's going to spend some time just aging in our lumber mill. Generally, that process is very long, but then the tree goes into production and we cut it into staves. And after it's cut into staves, those staves are going to sit out in the yard for a given length of time. We offer a wide range of stave ages, anywhere up to 36 months right now. And so, generally, as you get into higher age categories, the price and availability, the price goes up a little bit, the availability goes down. But people play around with the age of the staves because in general, you do get some development of flavor. You get some reduction in tannin, and you get some kind of opening of the pores of the wood through combination of desiccation, fungal action, and other effects. So things do happen to the wood while it's aging naturally. One of the things that we see is that our toasting system can really replicate to a great extent, a lot of the effects of natural aging. We're able to develop some of the same flavors, have some of the same effects on tannins. So I think the toasting system is really going to have a significant role to play down the road in showing people what's available even on younger wood. You don't necessarily have to go to a 24-month stave in order to achieve a specific tannin profile if you can modify that using our technology. But it's another way to achieve the same ends. And so then after the wood is aged, we always run it through our drying process, regardless of the age of that wood. And the reason for that is, again, we're committed to consistency. And so with naturally dried wood, there's always going to be some variation in stave to stave in terms of the moisture content. And moisture content is critically important in making a tight barrel. If those staves come in too wet, then they won't seal up properly after they go through the process. They won't machine properly. And so you end up with leaky barrels, and that's a problem. If they go too dry, they're liable to crack and break, which can not only affect the strength of the barrel, but it can also cause a lot of wasted wood. And so there's a pretty narrow target that we have to hit. And so we want to make sure that all the staves go within that target before they go into production. So that's just another part of the process that we try to control to the greatest extent possible.
Yeah, and you talk about some distilleries are coming to you with, it sounded like something like tannin counts, or do they come to you with some kind of flavor profile they're trying to hit?
Yeah,
and ask your opinion on it. Like, how does that work?
Absolutely. We've had a number of distilleries come to us and try to tailor a barrel to a specific product or flavor profile. We've worked with some industry experts to develop some guidance on that. And we're happy to work with distilleries to to help them figure out what barrel is going to best suit the specific product that they're trying to develop. The way that the age of the wood, the toast, the char, the specific type of wood can all affect the ultimate flavor that the product's going to produce. And so, and then as well as the age of maturation. So we want to make sure that when we're discussing with a distiller what they're trying to achieve, that we know how long they're planning to age that product for. Because different char levels and toasting levels can have different effects throughout the maturation process. So, for example, a heavy char, might give you a little bit better filtration properties down the road if you're going to age for a very long period of time. But if you're going to age for a very short period of time, you may opt for a heavier toast and a lighter char because it takes a little more time for that whiskey to penetrate a heavy char layer, and you can achieve some faster flavor results earlier in the maturation process with a toast that you can't achieve with a char alone, for example.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Question about process. Do you toast first or do you char first?
We toast first.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why is it helps to pull those wood sugars towards the inner surface of the barrel. And also, from a logistics standpoint, it's kind of hard to toast behind a charred layer.
Right.
So toasting is traditionally done prior to charring.
Okay.
When it is done on barrels that are charred. And really the toasting process kind of originates in the wine barrel industry way back in time, before steam was widely used to bend a barrel. Simple heat was used. So people would build a wood fire in the base of the barrel, and as the barrel heated up, that would allow it to be bent. And so that traditionally was one of the early steps in the process. And we've kept it there, and we use steam now to bend our wood, but then it always goes through that toasting process. And even if we're not applying a toast, we're still heating the barrel up to help make the wood more flexible. Because one of the steps in our process is a really advanced step where we smooth out the barrel and make sure all the staves are in really precise alignment. And doing that requires that the staves are nice and warm and flexible.
That's crazy. What is the most common toast char? Well, I guess let's take it a step back. How do you rate toast levels? Because a lot of different company goes, low, medium, high, right? Which is, it's a vague kind of guide. And somebody that's as precise as you all are, you have the ability to go, okay, low is probably between this range and this range. Medium is this range and this range. And like, how long do you cook it for? Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, we've got the ability to dial in these recipes pretty precisely, but we also are trying to educate a little bit about our process and what's unique about it and how we can work with distillers. So what we've done is we've kind of calibrated our systems to industry norms, but then we can offer on top of that more specialized profiles. So we have customers that request a specific time and temperature profile, and we can work with them to hit that, and then be able to produce a flavor that's really unique to them. In the future, we have some plans on ways to incorporate that into more and more of our processes, so we can offer more tightly grained toasting profiles that can achieve specific flavor results. But right now we're offering light, medium, heavy like everyone else. And then we also can offer the more precise toasting as a service on top of that. And I think, one thing that's going to be really interesting is when we're working with distillers to develop custom toasting and charring profiles, because it's the total heat input into that barrel, both the intensity of it and the length of it, that really has the effect on developing the character of the barrel and the character of the spirit that's going to come out of it. And so, we haven't had anyone work with us in that to that level yet, but it's something that we're really interested in. There's a few cutting edge people that we're working with that will probably want to try that after hearing this, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just in my little experiments here in my garage, toasting is such a big thing for me because I age, like you were saying earlier, age for a short period of time, so the flavor really pops out and comes through. But when I'm charring, I use cubes or staves or something like that.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for me to be consistent every time. I'm sitting there, putting heat to it, pulling it off, looking at what they call alligator skin on there. Does it look the same? But it doesn't actually also represent the exact same burning. Just because it looks the same on the outside doesn't necessarily mean it's the same inside.
That's exactly right. It's a combination of the intensity of that heat and how long it's applied, but there's more to it than that too. It's the moisture content of the wood and how consistent that is, the orientation of the grain in the wood. All those things really have an effect on it. And so, some of those we can control very precisely. Some of them we can't. Some of them nature really controls. But we're working on controlling the things that we can control, that that we can effectively manage to the greatest extent possible, and then giving distillers the choice to select from a range of options, intentionally varying things if necessary to achieve the kind of complexity that they've been getting almost by chance in the past. And so with our charring system, we're using natural gas to char. And natural gas is used by a lot of cooperages. But one of the things we do that tries to improve upon the state of the art is that we're clamping our barrels with a burner system when we char them. And so by clamping them on both ends, we're able to control the environment within that barrel much more precisely than just an open char. In fact, we've got a separate room in our cooperage where the char is located. And it's a really amazing system in that we can very precisely dial in that char, control the specific combustion temperature, so that we make sure that it's going to be charred the same way every time. The downside of it is, when we do our tours, it's a little less glamorous than seeing, big balls of flame shooting out of the top of barrels. When you come and look at our char, there's really not much to see. You see the barrel get clamped. You might see a little glowing flame through the sight glass. You don't see all the smoke and the flame that you're going to see somewhere else. But the benefit of what we do is that, when you order a number 3 char, you're going to get a number 3 char. And what number 3 means to you, and what it means to us might be a little bit different than what it means to another cooperage. But when you get it from us, it's going to be the same, or it's going to be controlled to a pretty precise level, every time. And so that's what we're working towards. Is just trying to find new ways to build those that automation and that control in your process.
Yeah, and it also seems like you're doing a much more efficient use of that energy that's being put into the barrel by capping the sides and not leaving it open. You're catching all that heat pushing through there. So again,
makes the cooperage a lot more bearable during the day too.
I'll bet. My goodness. What's the most common? We hear in the industry that char level 3 char is kind of the most common. What's the recipe that a lot of people are asking for right now, whether it be a medium toast and a level 3 char? Just curious what's out there.
Right. You hit the nail on the head. Medium toast and level 3 char is very popular.
Okay.
We're starting to get a lot more interest in actually a medium toast and a number 2 char. People are really getting interested in lightly charred barrels and what that can do. Particularly as they become more familiar with and comfortable with the toasting process. The lighter char, when you think about the char layer, there's really so much surface area in that charcoal layer that it doesn't take a lot of it to provide all the filtration of impurities that you normally get from that char layer. But if you're able to then build a deeper, richer toast layer, you can extract flavor and color just really great. By using that toast and not relying on that char. And if you go to too heavy of a char with a toast, you do run the risk of burning some of that toasted layer up. And that doesn't really serve your purpose. So we're starting to see more people gravitate towards the lower end of the char and sticking with that kind of medium toast or a heavy toast. But I'd say medium toast char 3 is really, that's kind of our standard here.
It's good it's really interesting to hear how the industry kind of changes over time and flavor profiles, and I don't know if it's requested differently based on, well, this is a bourbon, this is a rye, this is a corn, if it's a much lighter kind of char or whatever.
Absolutely. It does change. And, people, whether you're making like a wheated bourbon or a rye bourbon. I mean, people look at that too. And, it ultimately depends on what you're trying to achieve. I'm not sure there's really a right or wrong answer. People can make really great products using all kinds of, unique barrel treatments and processes. So ultimately, you just kind of have to find what works for you and then go with it. And make sure that you have a cooperage that can manage that process enough that you can get a consistent output.
That's amazing. So the question of the day is, what percentage do you think of the whiskey comes from the wood?
Well, I've heard anywhere from 50 to 80%, somewhere in that range, right? And I think that's probably accurate based on the tasting that I've done. Pinning it down more than that, I think, is a bit of a challenge, at least for me. But it's definitely has a major role in flavoring that spirit, and certainly over time has a role in tempering it, and just developing the character and taming it. So I think that the barrel is it's really been kind of the unsung hero of whiskey, and people are starting to figure out how big of a role it plays. And as more attention is brought to it, we really want to help provide some insights and some knowledge. And so we're going to be working with we're working with some universities right now and some customers to really try to develop a little more research around it and utilize our technology and our control to be able to provide more of a scientific, statistical approach than what's currently out there. Because it's, you look at like some of the research that's been done on the barrels in the wine industry and a little bit in the spirits industry, and the sample sizes on these are usually pretty small. And I kind of think that's because if you're like a PhD student and you're trying to get some grant money to go research whiskey barrels, they're gonna be like, no way, it ain't happening, right? Here's a couple $100, good luck. So you've got to rely on the benevolence of distilleries to do any research. And in general, there's just not a lot of knowledge over what kind of barrels they're getting and how they're treated. So, we're eager to work with, some industry leaders and trying to develop a little more public domain knowledge on how barrels affect the spirit.
Yeah, so let's go into that. So what's next with West Virginia Great Barrel Company? You're talking about partnering with some of these scientists and universities and industry leaders. Like, what else are you guys working on out there?
Well, we've got a lot going on. We're a learning organization. We're constantly iterating our processes and improving. Right now, we're focused on just trying to responsibly grow the business. And as a pretty new company, we're just still in a growth phase. So I think you'll be hearing a lot more about us in the future as we continue to grow and start to get back into the industry a little bit. We were going to be at some trade shows last year, and obviously that got put on hold. But this year, we'll be there, and we're excited to be working with a lot of great distilleries already. But we're looking forward to working with a lot more. It's been a lot of fun so far, and we just want to keep doing what we can to support distillers in the industry and keep moving it forward.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see your growth. I think you guys have some real potential out there, and man, looking forward to seeing what you guys are going to look like in the next 6 years, even that short of time. The amount of knowledge that you're going to have then, it's phenomenal.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we'd love to have you down here sometime to take a look at it. It's we're pretty excited about it and pretty passionate about making barrels down here.
I'll be there. Just, send me the time. As soon as you guys open up and you're ready, I'll be there. That sounds
Awesome.
like a great time. How can people learn more about your company, your socials, all that kind of good stuff? Let people know how to find you.
Sure. Well, they can visit our website you can get to it at www.wvbarrel.com, or you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/greatbarrel. We're also on Instagram and, all the social medias. And we have a YouTube channel as well with some videos of our process.
Yeah, I'll link over to all that kind of stuff in the description of this video as well. That way it's easy for everybody to get to. But Brett, I just want to say thanks again for taking the time to meet with me. I really do appreciate this. This was so much fun for me talking geek about wood and, unique regions of the U.S. where it.
And unfortunately, that's where the video ended. My internet gave out on me just at the last second while we were saying goodbye. But just want to say thanks to all the guys over at West Virginia. Great barrel company, ladies as well. Just to say thank you for taking the time to meet with me and schedule this and make this happen. So much fun hanging out with Brett and talking shop with him. Anyway, whenever that opens up, I'll be down there for sure. I'm super excited to see their facility. Anyway, thanks for watching. Really do appreciate all the likes, the comments, and everything else. Thank you all so much. And like we always do, cheers, y'all, to better whiskey.